Be a barbecue hero with delicious, ultra-low net-carb hero bread, buns, and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar, up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories per serving. Oh, and did I mention they taste like their mouth-watering traditional versions? I mean, what's not to love? Use code AH10 for 10% off your first hero bread purchase at hero.co. That's AH10 for 10% off at hero.co.
This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Following up on yesterday's show, we heard Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee's reaction to Joe Biden's executive order just this past Bloody Sunday, the executive order for voting rights. Also had a panel conversation on that with LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter, Pastor Michael McBride of the Black Church PAC, and the Reverend Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, blackpressusa.com. Wanted to hear their thoughts about the Biden executive order and voting rights here 56 years since Selma and Bloody Sunday. We now have several other special guests. We want to get some direct reactions to Biden's executive order. Let's bring them on. I believe we have LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter, who is with us. We have Pastor Michael McBride of the Black Church PAC, and we have the Reverend Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Let me just recap quickly. His executive order directs federal agencies to expand access to voter registration and election information, to assist states under the National Voter Registration Act, to improve and modernize the website vote.gov, to increase federal employees' access to voting, analyze barriers to voting for people with disabilities, increase voting access for active duty military and other overseas voters, provide voting access and education to citizens in federal custody, establish a Native American voting rights steering group. Those are just some of the highlights from his executive order. Welcome to you all. First of all, LaTosha Brown, who tore up the Brown Chapel service this morning with voice, and where Pastor Mike, I got a bunch of calls. They said, is LaTosha the preacher for the hour? And I said, well, I don't think so, but she sure got her preach on and got her sing on. We appreciate you. LaTosha, folks, LaTosha, we know Stacey Abrams, but we also know LaTosha because what Black Voters Matter has done in consort with what Stacey Abrams has done and the Black Church PAC has done, these are the people that you're watching on your screen who are responsible for getting the black vote out in November and making sure the Georgia runoffs were the success that they were. But LaTosha, let's start with you ladies first, queens first. Your reaction to Biden's executive order on this Bloody Sunday.
You know, I commend him. He did the right thing. That I commend him for, you know, we're in a long journey that what we have to really recognize is that voting rights is the foundation of democracy in this country. And so I think that is a good start. I commend him on the executive order. I think there's a lot of power, a lot of leverage around expanding the vote. You know, that is actually profound on a day such as today. I think it's really profound. And so I just want to thank him, and really talk about what is at stake. You know, when we're talking about, you know, what we are dealing with right now, we are dealing with a full-fledged frontal attack on the voting rights in this country. And we're going to have layers of work that we've got to do to make sure that we protect that vote. And so I think this executive order is an excellent first step around literally making sure that there's an expansion. I love the fact that the Native American community, that oftentimes people don't think about how they have been targeted. that literally out in the Midwest, they created whole laws that would actually not accept the post office box, their addresses at reservations. And what they had used is actually normally they had used post office box, but that was directed specifically at Native Americans. We've seen legislation that has been literally about a second language. You have to have everything in English. That has been significantly like directed at people of color, of our Latin brothers and sisters. And then when we look at these new laws that are happening in Georgia, 91 laws right now to restrict voting rights, including making illegal and a criminal offense of organizations like mine to give out water and potato chips to people who are standing in line for 2, 3, 4 hours. Matter of fact, last year in the election, there were some people that stood in line for 11 hours. But we can't be able to bring comfort care for them. That would be a criminal activity. And so I think it's really important that we see this kind of leadership coming out the White House, that we see this kind of leadership that's saying that voting rights is going to be a major issue and a cornerstone issue in this administration. We also have to push Congress, though, to make sure that we pass HR 1. We got to make sure that we actually have the full restoration of the Voting Rights Act of the John Lewis Voting Restoration Act. In addition to that, we also got to make sure that we put people in position and power in our local states that are actually going to align with our interests. We're not going to go back. And so I think that my first reaction is, I commend him. I'm very, very excited about him literally opening and making a message that this is a core important priority for his administration.
All right. Thank you. You all see how she gets you fired up. That's how she's able to motivate people. We appreciate that. LaTosha, Pastor Mike, mentioned Georgia. And I think some people may have been confused when they saw the Georgia Secretary of State and the governor resist Trump's demands. They probably made an assumption that all of Georgia had changed and that they were on our side. But as LaTosha just alluded to, our votes are very much in jeopardy again in Georgia. They're trying to change things up in a way. What are your thoughts about that, as well as your thoughts about this executive order from President Biden? All right. We'll come back to you, Mike. We'll get Mike's audio worked out. Dr. Chavis, your reaction to the executive order. It's a good start. Is it enough?
It's a very good start. And first, I just want to give a shout out to my sister leader, LaTosha Brown. I'm so proud of her. If there's ever a freedom fighter in the world, a great woman, it's LaTosha Brown. I've known her for decades, and every time I see she's making that impact, making a difference, I'm just so proud of her. And it's always good to be with Pastor Mike. But in answer to your question, Mark, it is significant that the President of the United States, on this day, on Bloody Sunday, has issued an executive order calling for further protections of voting rights. LaTosha is right. Listen, when you win a victory, you have to protect that victory. Now we have the response of the right wing in all these state legislators all over the country, including Georgia, to suppress the vote. And if you suppress the black vote, you suppress all American votes. And that's why black votes matter. That's why black lives matter. And that's why what President Biden did today matters. Executive orders matter when they come from the President of the United States on voting rights. 1 year later, I think John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Rev. Joseph Lowry, Hosea Williams, all of great heroes of the civil rights movement. I'm glad you had Reverend Jackson on earlier, Mark. Listen, we got to fight. And I hope that now that the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan has been voted on by the Senate, that we'll now vote these other legislation. We need the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. We need the reparations bill passed, H.R. 40. We need the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. And we need much more. We're in a fight. And as LaTosha knows, we cannot relent. We cannot relax. We want a great victory in November, a great victory in Georgia in January. But when we win these victories now have to be protected. Because I guarantee you, the right wing is coming. They're coming for blood. They're coming for votes. They're coming for the lives of our people. And we must stand up and defend ourselves.
Yeah, no question about it. Pastor Mike, I think we have you now. Can we hear you?
Yes, I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, brother. Your reaction to the executive order and the fight ahead. Because first of all, Pastor Mike, we know the Black Church PAC, like Black Voters Matter, is working in all the jurisdictions. This is what a president can do from the White House, but we know that this battle is really in these state houses and in these counties because everybody is still sort of hodgepodge when it comes to voter access and voter laws.
It reminds us that elections have consequences, and we are now experiencing some early fruit of the work that we've done. But on a Sunday morning, I didn't get a chance to preach this morning, so I want to throw the scripture out that says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. What the Republicans are demonstrating to us across this country in many states is they love to allow their wickedness in high places through systems and structures to continue to obstruct and block the kind of access that is guaranteed to us first by God, certainly by the Constitution through our blood, sweat, and tears on this Bloody Sunday memorial. It reminds us that we cannot relax, we cannot relent, we cannot abdicate our responsibility to push for an inclusive voter infrastructure all across this country in every state. That the executive order is a wonderful expression of the fruit of our labor from a federal level. The Voting Rights Act still has to get through the Senate, but there must be work that we insist that states and localities do to ensure that people with criminal convictions do not have an obstruction to voting. People who live in neighborhoods where there are not enough polling places do not continue to experience the systemic and structural disinvestment in the opportunity to vote. So this is certainly a great step. It's great to see President Biden delivering on some of the promises that he's made. But as LaTosha says all the time, can't stop, won't stop. We still got a long ways to go. And I know that our Black churches, our Black faith leaders, our Black church people, folks are still tuned in to making sure that we can hold the line on this and keep moving forward to ensure that not only everyone has the right to vote, but governance delivers material conditions to the people that need it.
Pastor Mike, you said you didn't get a chance to preach this morning. I told you didn't have to because LaTosha preached at Brown. I'm literally being texted right here on my phone during this broadcast. Who was that? What was she doing preaching? But anyway, we appreciate her. LaTosha,
she definitely carries a sermon with her in her back pocket, believe me.
That's right. We're going to talk about that, because it's our job to help discern others who have the call, those of us who are already ordained.
I'm Danielle Moody.
I'm Touré.
Be sure to check out Democracy-ish, where we channeled the frustration, rage, and absurdity that was the 2020 election, as well as discuss the current state of the political climate and our country from a Black perspective. New episodes available every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you stream your podcasts.
LaTosha, it's interesting as we commemorate Bloody Sunday at this very moment, when people were suppressed from the vote physically. Nothing has really changed, has it, LaTosha? In fact, the suppression, they may not use horses and batons and state troopers at the moment. They're doing some things that are really even more sophisticated, aren't they?
Mark, you might be surprised at my answer, but, when I think about this notion, because I was actually in my bed the other day, really upset about what was happening. There are 91 bills, as I mentioned, in Georgia. Matter of fact, on tomorrow, 1/3 of all of the bills that are being considered that will be voted on tomorrow from the Georgia legislature are bills about restricting voting access. 1/3. And so I'm raising this of how on one hand you look at it and say things are not changing, things are staying the same. But oh yes, they are. Let me say this, that if you look at what those limited group of white folks who have always been in a space to try to suppress and marginalize, you right, they have not changed at all. But let me tell you where the real change is. The real change is now there's been an awakening. There's an awakening in our communities. There's awakening with our people just in Georgia alone. In Georgia, the whole runoff election system was created so that Black folks, not just in Georgia, throughout the South, so that Black people would not participate in the process. But guess what? There were more Black folk in Georgia that voted in the runoff this last election cycle than in the general election. That is historic. That is unheard of. That we actually, in spite of the voter suppression, in spite of all the tricks that they've done, that literally when people wake up, we can actually make a shift. And so I think that part of the issue is we got to shift our focal point. Our liberation ain't based on whether white folk accept it or not. Our liberation ain't based on whether this system validates us. God validated us. That part of who we are in our agency is to really operate in a way that we are speaking life into some dry bones so that our folks can rise up. And so what we saw this last election cycle, through all of what Trump did with aligning himself with the white supremacists, through all of what he did and to put judges in position to actually discriminate against us, for all what they did, like in Georgia, where they dropped 200,000 voters from the voting rolls 6 months prior to the primary. But all they did at the end of the day, we were able, when we stepped into our power, like even in their own system that was designed to have us at an advantage, we actually overcame. And so I think the real message is we can't get caught up in just this message of saying things hadn't changed, stayed the same. No, that system has continued to stay the same, but who we are is we are different. And so I think that we've got to lean into that difference, because that's going to require us. Let's be honest about the Voting Rights Act. While the Voting Rights Act was a remarkable piece of legislation, and it certainly opened up the opportunity for us, in 1965, that was a compromise. We have not achieved exactly what we need to achieve. The fact that the Voting Rights Act had to be ratified, reauthorized every 25 years, saying that our work was not done. Yeah. And so sometimes, there's a family member of mine that used to say, until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, you won't change. And so right now, in this moment, that what we can look at is what we're experiencing around voter suppression is literally around this country is being exposed all around the world. It has gone around this world saying that it is the greatest democracy. Yet people can see its treatment of Black folks is exposing who they are. People around the world, when they looked at January 6th, when they saw folks climbing up on the Capitol, right? Because over a big lie, they saw the president incite that. All around the world, people saw what was happening. And so I raise that while there were founders of America that we know as a nation, the founders of democracy, of making democracy be real, it has always been Black people. That literally we stood in our agency when we were singing those songs. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on and talking, marching up to freedom's land. Now, Mark, I know you didn't ask me to sing, and I know I'm giving a long answer to this question, but I'm saying this because I want our people to keep their eyes on the real prize. Oftentimes, we get confused and believe that the prize is for somebody else to accept us, for somebody else to affirm us. Our God affirms us. And so whenever we have literally stood in that space, that we had agency, we had power, things had to change. We didn't only change this little city of Selma, we changed the nation, we changed the world. And so while we're seeing all of these ugly bills go through, we're seeing all of this stuff and this corruption happen at the highest level, we have to take the time to radically reimagine what this nation can be. And those of us that got the courage, that God has given us the vision and the insight, we got to stand on that, because if it was up to some folks, we'll still be enslaved. Here I stand. Here we are right now. Right. So that has always been based in not somebody else, but it's been based on our belief. And so I think that's the greater message. So no, things are not the same, because I have been changed and millions of us are being changed.
Amen. And I don't need to ask you to sing. Everybody wants you to every time you're anywhere. So you have everybody's understood permission and express permission to do that. Dr. Chavis, you represent the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. A lot of our people don't realize how much of a fight this still is and how we cannot relax. What's the NNPA doing and its member institutions, its member publishers and newspapers to help get this word out and keep people informed?
Well, first I want to say amen to the Reverend Dr. LaTosha Brown. Thank you for that sermon, and thank you for that song. Thank you for that prayer. You embody what fighting for freedom is all about. The National Newspaper Publishers Association, Mark, we are at press today all over the country about the executive order and about this continuing fight. One thing you can rest assured that in 2021, this is the 194th year of the Black Press of America. Since 1827, when Freedom's Journal was first published in New York. We've been on the front line, not only reporting the news, but being an advocate for change, that LaTosha says. And I'm going to join with what she said, Mark. There is change, but it's coming from the bottom up. There is change. It's coming from the grassroots. There is change. It's coming from people being able to discern all of the fake news versus the real news. The real political leaders versus pseudo-politicians who claim to be. And these state legislators, I agree with Pastor Mike and LaTosha, we got to really focus on these state legislators. And I think, Pastor Mike and LaTosha, we need to vote some of these people out of office at the state level. We need to put them out. We just can't allow these people to take our vote away or suppress our vote. And so an unprecedented thing happened on the primary in Georgia and the runoff in Georgia. And I think the next time we have a chance to vote in Georgia, we need to vote these people out of office that have been trying to suppress our vote.
Yes, sir.
And 2022 is going to be very important.
That's right.
And 2024 is going to be very important. Every year is important. We cannot relent. We have to build on every year. And I can assure you that the Black press, we're going to be out there advocating as well as reporting the news and strongly supporting our voting rights and the exercise of our voting rights and keeping people conscious every day. And so Bloody Sunday is a day for rededication, for reaffirmation. And we're thankful that you are there in Selma, Mark, with this special program as we reach out to people all over the United States.
Thank you, brother. Got to go quickly, Pastor Mike. Just a big documentary on PBS about the Black Church, our oldest political organization. Yes, it is. Tell everybody about what the Black Church Political Action Committee is going to do to put teeth in Biden's executive order and to be sure we continue to fight against voter suppression.
Well, as we speak, we are launching some local and regional chapters among Black churches within both denominations. We are standing up an effort to train Black church folks who want to run for office in a local or state context. We do believe that voting is critically important, but so is governance. And bad governance can turn out to create de facto voter suppression if people don't believe that who you elect actually changes their material conditions. Right. So the Black Church PAC is going to continue our work to work alongside partners and comrades like Black Voters Matter, Until Freedom, all of our Black church denominations, etc., to make sure that we keep the folks that we were able to onboard into voting this last cycle and keep that momentum going. Reverend Jesse Jackson also said that the largest block of voters in this country are non-voters. And so we still have some work to do to make sure that we're continuing to pick up those rocks that are laying around. This executive order hopefully makes it easier for there to be a federal and resourced infrastructure to make that job easier. But indeed, it still remains on us as the people, particularly within the Black church, now being targeted even the more by Republican operatives and legislators to limit our access to the ballot box. It's important for the Black church to become the most inclusive organization within the Black community and make sure that everybody sees a Black church in their neighborhood as a home for them politically, even if we may have different theological and religious kind of starting points. That, I think, is the job of the Black church and the Black Church PAC, the Black Church Action Fund, our Live Free work. All of that continual work will hopefully continue to resource the movement and building of power within the Black church in the days, weeks, and years to come.
Pastor Michael McBride, organizing the Black church politically. LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter. Reverend Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Support the Black Press, blackpressusa.com. And congratulations to Dr. Ben on the new mural unveiled of his image in Miami. I want to thank all three of you for joining us on this commemoration of Bloody Sunday. Thank you for all your hard work. Check out all of these organizations, folks, and get involved and get organized. Thank you, all three, okay? God bless you. Love you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, take care now.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, subscribe, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving, plus high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10, HERO.co.